In this video, I'm going to talk to you about the importance of balancing your soil microbiology if you're trying to grow the healthiest, tastiest food in the most sustainable and natural way that you can. Now, if you follow me or my channel, you will know that I talk about the importance of having a healthy, active, bountiful, diverse mix of microbes in and around your plant in order to get the very most out of your soil. And the way to understand this is to carry out a soil test. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So before you start doing anything, test your soil, look at what you do or don't have within it. You can then begin to address some of those elements which need attention. That could be things that there are too much of or things that there are not enough of. And that extends to the microbiology as well. Quite often when I come across soil, when I look at soil tests or working with growers, very often their soils are what I refer to as fungal deficient. So that's to say their soils lack or are low in the numbers of fungi. Now, I think I'm yet to actually encounter a soil that is bacterial deficient or bacteria deficient, and that is because these organisms seem to be far more resilient and well placed to come back whenever they are attacked or their population set back. So fungi is often one of the biggest areas of concern, although that's just relevant to UK soils that I do the majority of my work with. Elsewhere, further afield in the world, you might have the reverse problem. You might have very high levels of fungi and very low levels of bacteria. And when we look in nature, we can see actually that different plants, different settings actually prefer different types of organisms. So a grassy situation may well have far more bacteria than fungi. Whereas if we go into a well-established, mature woodland, we could find much higher levels of fungi. And it's this mix of plant and microbe that you have to hold in your head when you're planning your actions. So before you go all out to build up your levels of fungi, you need to have a look at what you're planning on growing as well as what you're growing now, and also the soil that you're working with. And the reason this is so important is because the soil that we're working with often holds certain limitations. After all, you only have the soil that you've got. So the percentages of sand, silt and clay that give us the texture are pretty much set, and it's very difficult to change that quickly. Over time, with the addition of organic matters and other materials, it might be possible to alter that. But here and now, we're working with the soil characteristics that we are blessed with. And these characteristics extend to the soil pH, how acid or how alkaline the soil is as well. And this is really key because the soil pH can also influence whether a soil favours bacteria or fungi. And in fact, a soil with a higher pH, more alkaline, tends to favour bacteria, whereas a fungal soil sits closer around the low pH, more acidic end of the spectrum. And so if you're growing food, it's important to understand these base properties, the soil texture, the amount of organic matter, the pH that I've just mentioned, as well as, if you can, an assessment of the soil life too. And when we're growing food, we're fairly blessed in so much as a large proportion of the foods and crops available to us sit in what's generally referred to as the neutral zone. That's around pH 6 to 7, which is pretty much the transition between a bacterial soil and a fungal soil. Now, there are some exceptions to this which you'll be familiar with, and it will depend on locality. So wherever you are in the world, also the varieties that you're growing may prefer or buck the trend somewhat. But the important thing here is the fact that this transitional region, this kind of pH 6 or 7, which is the ideal, should really, in my view, be mimicked by the soil life. And my point is this: if we're aiming to build diverse soil, that means changing what we grow, putting more different types of plants through the soil to increase our diversity. In order to increase the amount of crops at our disposal, we need to have the widest range of bacteria and fungi at our disposal. And so even if your soil is fungally deficient, rather than going hammer and tongs all out to bulk up just the fungi, we should be aiming for a balanced soil. So that means equal proportions bacteria to fungi. Now, such proportions may not realistically be practical for the reasons outlined, such as the local soil properties and characteristics, but that should not stop us aiming for it. So when you are building life in your soil, you should be doing it in a balanced way that's aiming ultimately to have equal proportions of bacteria and fungi, rather than just all out for one particular organism. If you test your soil throughout the year, or if you test it when you start a new crop, you will probably see these proportions change, or what we refer to as organism ratios. And these organism ratios are really useful tools. They can give us an understanding of the total population of an organism like bacteria, or the total population of fungi, and it can also tell us how much of that population is active, alive and functioning at any one time as well. It can also tell us about the proportions of one organism to another, so the amount of bacteria in relation to fungi, or the amount of active fungi in relation to active bacteria. And when you track these things, you will see that the soil is dynamic and it changes. But if you are routinely monitoring your soil, so testing it at the same time each year, and acting on that with certain amendments to build or maintain soil life, you should be aiming for a 1-to-1 ratio, so 1 part bacteria to 1 part fungi. This, in my view, is ultimately the best way to go if you're looking to build the most active, diverse and sustainable soil in the long term. That way it's more likely to support the widest array of crops and plants that you're looking to grow. That wraps this video up for today. It was just a short discussion. Felt like I had to get that off of my chest. I hope you enjoyed it though. If you did, do please like or give it a thumbs up. If you've got any questions, as always, reach out to me. There's an email in the video description. Otherwise, if you find content that teaches you how to manage your soil, get the most out of it so that you can do things more naturally and produce the very healthiest, tastiest food, then really it would be great if you would subscribe to the channel as well. But that's it for now. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Cheerio!